Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Monster Report. We're so glad to have you joining us for another Top 10, but this is going to be a very interesting Top 10. I'm excited to have Justin with me. Justin's joining me from California, and he contacted me with a very interesting Top 10. So, Justin, welcome to the Monster Report. Good to have you.
Right. Thank you, Nicholas. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Yeah, and pleasure to have you. You had contacted me because you saw some of my other top 10s, and you had an interesting idea for a top 10. What was your idea?
Yes, I was thinking that since Ishiro Honda's birthday is coming up soon, I was figuring, and he'll be turning 110 years old today. I was thinking about going back and doing a top 10 of his some of his other movies. So,
very cool. Yeah, now Ishiro Honda, for us Godzilla fans and kaiju fans, he's one of our favorites. Jun Fukuda did some really good Godzilla films as well, and then Ishiro Honda, what we've kind of discovered through the books that we've read, like Steve Reifel and Ed Godziszewski's book, is that Ishiro Honda and Akira Kurosawa were good friends, and of course he had films outside of the kaiju genre, and so that's kind of what you wanted to talk to us about today, and I think that's really cool because a lot of Godzilla fans might not have been exposed to some of these films, and I think that's really cool.
Oh, absolutely. And so he directed 25 movies total, 25 kaiju and toku movies in general, and I think only 8 of them were Godzilla movies.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the in the sense that the international recognition may have come through the kaiju films, but he also had his films that he worked on outside of the kaiju genre, which were, beautiful films too, and a lot of people may not get the chance to. But with the advent of DVD and streaming and, other avenues for us to acquire these films, I think it's important to check out some of his other works. So you have a top 10 list. I'm interested in hearing some of these, and I'm probably going to be receiving somewhat of an education myself because I haven't seen all of his non-kaiju films.
That's fair enough. And how I rank these top 20, so it's 25 movies total, and there are 10 that I specifically gravitate towards when I think about my personal favorites, because the remaining 25 to 11, they kind of fluctuate in terms of what mood I'm in. So someday I would rank Frankenstein versus Baragon in the number 13 spot, and then the next day it'll be on the number 11, depending on how it feels. But these are the top 10 that I definitely felt were cemented in my mind, and I really wanted to share my thoughts on them.
Sure, and before we get to your top 10, do you rank them in the sense that they have the rewatchability, or is it maybe its impact on just filmmaking and the art? How is it that you kind of chose to put your in the top 10 ranking order you chose?
This is in terms of rewatchability and personal favorites.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
And before we start, these are only the Japanese versions on this list. So I know that some of these movies were heavily edited for the U.S. releases, so we won't be counting that. But this is clearly the Japanese versions. I just want to get that out of the way.
Understand, yeah, and just like when some of us may have saw the original Gojira 54 for the first time after seeing, the King of the Monsters with Raymond Burr and all of that, I remember my reaction to seeing that the first time was, this is almost an entirely different film. It is so, just the style of it. There was a lot of respect given, I think, to it with the King of the Monsters U.S. release, but I think you really do need to see that original Japanese in its subtitled form, where you can hear the emotions coming out of the actors that were portraying these roles, and subtitles. I think that's one of the things a U.S. audience has to get out of the way is thinking, gosh, I don't want to read a movie. Honestly, you get engaged in the film, and the subtitles are not, you end up loving it, and you end up really finding yourself, immersing yourself in these films. And I think Honda really knew how to do that with his films.
Yes, I totally understand.
Yeah. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into our top 10. I'm interested in hearing these.
Okay, so my number top 10, I decided on The Mysterians. Now, I think it's a very interesting movie in that it was the first to use Toho scope, and it really, and just the sci-fi world that it brings to life really helps in that manner. It's a very, very colorful movie, even for its time, and just in terms of special effects, the fact that these effects are really prototypical, I think it just adds to a certain charm, don't you think?
That's true. Mysterians is a favorite. I love the music to Mysterians. I just love the fact that you have some really great actors. I'm gonna
and Yumi Shirakawa.
Yeah, and in the Mysterians outfit, the alien outfits, they don't get to see their faces, and I've discussed this in other episodes where we talk about that. Actors like to see their faces, but that wasn't a big deal. Yoshio Tsuchiya, that's the one I was thinking of. In the lead alien role there, it didn't matter to him if his face wasn't being seen. He was one who really loved to be in Honda Films and be someone who was a little bit off, a little bit, the not normal, I guess you could say, role. He didn't need to necessarily be the leading man, and I think the Mysterians he did a fantastic job in.
Yeah, so Chia really, really enjoyed his career, and from what I've read, and he always liked playing aliens or damaged characters, and I think that's what really adds to his uniqueness in general. You do know that he also played Mr. Shindo in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, right?
That's right. Yeah, and much later in life, and getting to see him in that role, and then playing his younger self, which actually didn't look like his younger self, I guess, in a sense, but in the World War II scenes, and then coming back, didn't take away from the impact of that character. I love Mr. Shindo and how he was so broken by the loss of the Godzilla, dinosaur that saved his life and his troops' lives. I think that was, again, like you said, he likes to play damaged, broken, someone who's a little on the edge kind of character, and I think Honda could really bring that out in some of the films that he was directing, Godzilla and non-Godzilla too. So Mysterians is a great top 10, number 10 pick.
Yes, and I also seem to be in the minority who likes the Showa Mogira over the Heisei one. Yeah. I know it's kind of blasphemous, but me personally, I think the Showa Mogira has a bit of a charm to its overall design, and the fact that you could see Haru Nakajima walking around while the fire is being thrown at him is just a spectacle to see, really.
It is. And, my first experience with the show of Mogira, or Mogira for that matter at all, was in the Godzilla 1985 video game, or 85-86, the Nintendo game, where you actually did get to fight Mogira, even though at that time there was no interaction between Godzilla and Mogira. So that was interesting that they had him thrown in there, in that video game. So that's where I discovered the Mysterians later in life, was I've seen him before, and I thought that was really cool to see that he was in a movie that didn't even have his name in the title. It was the Mysterians, because it wasn't about Mogira, was it?
No, I don't think so. It was kind of an afterthought. And speaking of the video game, are you talking about Godzilla Monster of Monsters? That was the basis for the NES creepypasta?
That's right. Yes.
Yes.
I still play that game. I love it.
Yes. Well, totally. So I actually discovered the Mysterians through the band Question Mark and the Mysterians and their song 96 Tears. So it was a very different experience for me.
I don't know that one. I'm going to have to look that up now.
Yes. It's a pop song from the 60s.
Okay. Very cool. So yeah, that's a good number 10 pick for you.
Yes, thank you. So my number 9, I'm going to have to go with The Invasion of Astro Monster, aka Monster Zero. So this one is kind of an interesting one for me. When I first saw it, I didn't really mind it that much. because I felt it was kind of a rehash of Ghidorah the Creator Monster. But after several viewings of it and speaking with others on the movie, I definitely did grow to appreciate it a little more. I feel it's kind of a perfection of the previous space stories that were in the Mysterians Battle on Our Space and Borath. And I feel here that the way that they infused the space part was a little more competent than in those previous three movies. What do you think?
Yes, I love Invasion of Astro Monster. It's got the sci-fi feel that I love from the Mysterians as well. The idea that these aliens here, they've got nefarious, intentions. In the case of the Mysterians, I'm trying to remember exactly, but essentially they wanted to breed with our women, right? The human women. And in the case of the Exians, they needed water. They needed liquid water. And so that was interesting how, Earth has the resources and, they're obviously outpower us in technology. And Honda was really able to bring that out with both of those roles. And I love the classic sci-fi look of both of those films. They're fantastic.
Yes. And a lot of people complain that it doesn't have enough Godzilla in it. I think he only has like 5 minutes of screen time in that movie. Yeah. But if you look at it as a sci-fi movie in of itself, it's quite tolerable, and the characters are pretty good too.
Yes.
Especially if you have Dick Adams as astronaut Glenn, and his chemistry with Akira Takarada is really top notch. I really enjoyed their performance. Yes,
and I love the fact that whether or not they were speaking the same language or not, because if I'm knowing correctly, on the set, I believe Nick Adams was speaking English, Takarada was speaking Japanese, and it really didn't matter because in the end, it was going to get dubbed or subtitled in whatever version it was going to be outputted to. So the fact that they could act together, not speaking the same language, and have that chemistry, I think is really saying something about their acting ability and how much they respected and liked each other.
Why, thank you. Yeah. Yes, I totally agree with that. And it also has Kumi Mizuno as Miss Namikawa. I thought she was a pretty decent actress as well.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the characters, they have pretty good roles. I definitely will agree with that.
And Akira Kubo is always entertaining. He can be so many different roles. He can be the nerdy scientist. He can be the action hero. He can be just about anything. I love him. And Mr. Takarada. Have you met Mr. Takarada personally?
Unfortunately, no. But I really would like to speak with him about some of the movies he starred in.
Mm-hmm. He is such a just warm, friendly, just sweet man, and me being Nick Adam, if you will, I wanted to recreate the scene where they both get arrested by the Exians and do the thumbs down and hands behind the head kind of thing. So we had a little photo shoot where we got to recreate the Nick Adams and Takarada scene from Invasion of Astro Monster, just because, and he was so cool with it. He thought that was a great idea. So that film is one of my favorites from my childhood too. And like you said, despite the fact that Godzilla's screen time is minimal, it's engaging. It's fantastic.
Yes, exactly. The only problems I really have with the movie are the fact that Ghidorah is under mind control and that there's a lot of stock footage in the final battle. And unfortunately, the ending is kind of a downer for me. But other than that, I feel the movie is still pretty solid. Monster Zero is very decent.
That's right. And it gave us an alternate name for King Ghidorah or GHIDRAH in naming him Monster Zero, too. I like having multiple names. When I'm growing up, I remember referring to the mantises and spiders in Son of Godzilla as Kamacuras and... Not Kamacuras, Spiga or Spiga and Gimantis. And then later in life I learned that wasn't at all what their names were, but that was for the American releases. And so now when my children watch it with me, they call them those because we're watching the dubs, and I was like, oh no, it's sorry guys, it's Kamunga and Kamacuras, guys, get it right.
Yeah, I was actually on a Discord server and we were talking about spiders that night.
And the giant spider from Son of Godzilla, yeah.
Yes, they actually named the real life spider after Kamunga, believe it or not.
No, I didn't know that. Like a giant
Yes.
tarantula or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. Do you refer to it as Invasion of Astro Monster or Godzilla vs. Monster Zero? How do you refer it?
I usually just refer to the movie as Monster Zero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got so many titles.
Yes, exactly.
Well, great number 9 pick.
Alrighty then. So that was my number 9. And then my number 8, I probably would have to go with War of the Gargantuas. So it's another movie that has a very big cult following, and I think it also has a charm of its own. The fact that it has two brother monsters, with one of them just going around eating people and the other one trying to snap them out of it. It's a very good monster dynamic, and that I don't feel was really explored on in other Honda movies. But it came out in droves in this movie.
Yeah, it did, and I think that it's one of sorry, I'm the actor who played GHIDRAH, the original Godzilla, Nakajima. Yeah, it's one of Nakajima's, I believe, one of his favorite roles to play because of how much he could act through the suit, and I think that's even more than Godzilla. I think that was him really. I mean, when you watch it, you see how animate he is and moving, whereas the Godzilla suit was pretty restrictive and took a lot of his strength to do. I wonder if this one allowed him to really stretch in his suit performance. And yeah, the War of the Gargantuas, it probably didn't have maybe the following it had, like it has now. It's got such a cult following, like you said. And I wonder how well it was received when it was originally released, and I didn't see it as a kid. I do remember a VHS tape out there, but I didn't get it because it didn't see Godzilla on the cover, I guess. And so I guess I was, like, well, I didn't really care about it. And then later I was like, man, this is a great movie. This is one I can't put down. It's fantastic, and it's got Honda's, just signature way that he shoots and gets the performance out of everyone that he directs. I love Honda's style in that, and the fact that we have, like you said, with the Invasion of Astro Monster, we have an American actor in there, Russ Tamblyn, though not one of my favorite American actors in a kaiju film. I don't think he was. He felt really subdued, I guess.
Yeah, he didn't have the same level of enthusiasm that Adams did, and unfortunately, you can sort of see it in that movie.
Yeah.
So that's one area that I think Frankenstein vs. Baragon does a little better, in my opinion. But here, the way I put it is that I felt that Frankenstein vs. Baragon had the better human cast, whereas this movie had the better monsters. Don't you feel?
I would totally agree with that, and you really see how the suit actors who played both Sanda and GHIDRAH interacted with each other, communicated with each other without using words, and I think that really says something. If you can, mime it, essentially, if you can get across, the communication without the nonverbal communication that they had with each other, and it really comes out in that film, and you're really interested in knowing, how this battle is going to end, and which Gargantua am I rooting for, and all of that. And I think it's got a lot going for it in that, and it's got some great frightening scenes when you see that GHIDRAH, for instance, actually will target people. He will actually pick them up out of a crowd, whereas Godzilla, he'll just stomp right through a crowd. He doesn't really care about the individual. But GHIDRAH, he will go after you as an individual.
Yeah, that actually is one of my favorite scenes with him looking up through the water. I thought that's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, at that point, if you're looking down at that and see that coming up, you know you're done for.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, I love the Gargantuas, and be nice if we could get a good Blu-ray release of that someday.
Yes, I actually have a Region 2 Blu-ray release of it, so
Oh, I bet that looks beautiful.
it does. It really does.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Great, number
Movie
8.
Gargantuas is my number 8. And speaking of which, my number 7 is Rodan. So, the movie that was released as part of the Classic Media properties. So, yeah, Rodan is just a very prototypical movie, kind of like the Mysterians, but it's another one that I feel has some fun factor to it. And it's a very smart movie. You initially go into it thinking it's like a Japanese remake of Them with giant killer insects, but then its movie transitions into something else. So, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, Rodan is definitely one of my favorites. It was at the video rental store along with the Godzilla films that they did have, and that was one that did capture my attention because I thought it was about, was more of a dinosaur film, and that's what I gravitated towards it. And when I watched it, I was pleasantly pleased because he made appearances in Godzilla films as I was discovering them, and so to see that, it's almost 2 movies, 2 kaiju films almost put together with the Meganula, Mega, whatever they're called, Meganulon, yeah, insect creatures, and then the dual Rodans that you see, because having almost 2 movies put together like that actually makes it more interesting. And the fact that the Meganula, you thought they were going to be the big villain in it, and he almost leads you into believing that because of the mining and all that, but at the same time, you knew this film is also called Rodan, or Radon in Japanese. I'm glad for the American audience, they switched that around a little bit because we might be confused as to a film about radon. So the fact that you have that, and then but it wasn't done with surprising you, because you discovered that there were 2 Rodans, and so a male and a female, I guess, and I think that was pretty cool and surprising to the audience. And it's like, we don't just have one kaiju that's a threat to us; we have 2, and so trying to think of a way to defend ourselves against this, and Honda, really brought that out. I think in the character, and of course the suit actor playing him, Mr. Nakajima again. And
yes.
Some great shots that you can pick out of the film Rodan, and that's my favorite of the Rodan suits, is the original, the '56 classic.
Yes, and it really brings out the atmosphere in the movie because you explore the very creepy and dark tunnels, and then you have the mountainside with the volcano. There are some really good cinematography shots in this film.
Mm-hmm. And we've got great performance from Kenji Sahara and others.
Yumi Shirakawa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm trying to think if I don't remember if Akihiko Hirata.
He is in this movie. He kind of looks like Buddy Holly with the glasses.
He's the scientist. Yes, that's
yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So it's a great cast too. I wish it were in scope though. I know this was early in the kaiju films in Toho, so I think it's only in 4:3 ratio, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Too bad for that film, but it's still, engaging and fantastic.
Yes, it's probably my favorite part is the final scene with the volcano erupting. It was just a very beautifully shot scene, and it was very fitting. And
yes, to both the Rodans, and then later I think that was cool because they took the Rodan volcano theme and then kind of turned it on its head with the 2019 King of the Monsters, that Rodan actually comes out of the volcano. So I think that's a cool little tie-in with that, that maybe somehow he, in a sense, evolved if he got over his problem with the fire and all that and became sort of a fire monster. But this one, inspired a lot of other films too. A lot of people forget that. I think it inspired the Gappa films and the Gorgo film. That idea of the flying monster, and then kind of a familial monster, because there's a male and a female, or a mate, I guess you could say. And so I think that's something that was unique in that, and seeing that come out in this film, it's got a lot of rewatchability for me too.
Mm-hmm.
Great pick.
I know it's not officially canon, but I always like to think that the Rodan that appears in Three-Headed Monster is the offspring of these two.
Now that is an interesting idea. Yeah, because where did that Rodan come from? You're right.
Yes, exactly.
From underground.
Yes.
Yeah.
Underneath Mount also.
That's right.
Yes. So, yeah, number 7 is Rodan, and number 6 is the original Mothra. Now, this is a really, really fun movie for me. It's very colorful. It's very bright. It's a mix of both lighthearted and serious stuff, and the characters are just phenomenal. I mean, you have Frankie Sakai as Snapping Turtle, Hiroshi Koizumi as Professor Shinichi Chujo, and of course you got Jerry Ito as Clark Nelson, who's a really, really over-the-top villain who steals the show for everyone to see. And your thoughts?
You love to hate Nelson, don't you? I love to hate him. He's a great villain. He is so slimy and backstabbing. I think he's a great villain, and it's a shame we didn't have maybe more films featuring some great villains like Mr. Nelson. I remember watching this film recently with my dad, because they came out with a Steelbook Blu-ray, and I picked that up and watched it with my dad, and he hadn't seen it in a long time, and he was like, "What flag is that in the background of one of the press releases?" And I was like, "Oh, well, that's Rolisica." Oh.
Yes, it's a fictional country, and I think that's like the first time they actually bring up a fictional country, because I know that Godzilla vs. Violante had Saradia,
right?
Three-Headed Monster had another small Asian country that was where the princess was from. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it was very interesting satire of its time, the whole U.S.-Japan security treaty and the worries of influence with doing business with the West. And I think the Mothra lore is just really spectacular. Like, you have the Shobijin played by the Peanuts, and this movie has an amazing soundtrack. It is absolutely beautiful, and it definitely is one of my favorite non-Ifukube scores.
That's true, yeah. He didn't think he could conduct the music for the Peanuts, and then later on he was still doing themes for Mothra's reappearance in other films, Godzilla films. And so, yeah, Ifukube had no problem with the chops to that, but he did, pass on the soundtrack. I always think that's I thought that was an interesting story of how that transpired to get a different conductor.
Yes, Yuichi Koseki is a really, really great composer with this movie, and he just delivers on it spectacularly. I feel like the music, the effects, the cast all work together in harmony with this movie, and it is all for the better. I love this movie. Yeah,
and I love the fact that you do get Mr. Chujo Koizumi playing himself, playing that same role in was it
Tokyo SOS?
Tokyo SOS. I was going to say GMK, but you're right, Tokyo SOS. And then so you have the continuation of that character, into his old age with his grandchildren and all. And I think that's really a tribute back to the original Mothra, which was in itself introduced us to Godzilla's foe that is the only one really who's kind of beaten him, really.
If you count Mecha-G, he was really close.
Really close, yeah. And I think I explained this in the case of Mecha-G and Mechagodzilla 2, the 93 film, right? He technically did beat him if Rodan hadn't intervened, I guess. So yeah, that's true. But yeah, Mothra, being undefeated in that sort of way. But then I always like seeing Mothra teaming up with Godzilla and Mothra teaming up with other kaijus. That's some of my favorites. But Mothra as, such a unique kaiju in that sort of way, because like Rodan, you always have, the kind of wings that Rodan has, and then the kind of wings that Mothra has is very beautiful in comparison with Rodan, because just the flowing nature of how they built that, I think that's that just makes Mothra such a cool character, such a cool kaiju. And yeah, Mothra is definitely one of my favorites going way back, and I love the lightheartedness, like you said, of this. It's somewhat comedic. Let me go back to the Rolisica again. I think that was when, that's a film that requires some explaining, because someone might think there is actually a Rolisica, and I remember in the commentary of the Mothra film with Steve Reifel and I think Edgar Jaschewski, but I know Steve Reifel was talking about that maybe one of the original names was Romerica, I think, and it ended up as Rolisica, kind of a combination between Russia and America. So if Mothra were to fly from Japan to Rolisica, I guess it's located somewhere in the neighborhood of Russia. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, it's definitely somewhere along the Bering Strait. It must be really cold there.
Right. Yeah. And in somewhere along the lines, you'll find Jerry Ito's or Nelson's farm, right?
Yes, exactly.
I think, yeah, that was such a cool film too. Great number. What are we at? Number 6? Is that correct?
Yes, number 6. It's my favorite Toho movie, kaiju movie, not featuring Godzilla. So here on out, there's a lot of G films that I'm about to cover. So
okay.
All right, Ian. So my number 5 is Mothra versus Godzilla, and yeah, I think it definitely lives up to its hype. It's another cult classic that a lot of people hold up as one of the gold standards next to Gojira. Everything seemed to be working perfectly during the production of this movie, and I feel it was kind of like it was. I think Honda's career really reached its zenith around 63 to 64. So
yeah,
that was when I felt like he did his best. And while I do respect this movie and all that and the following that it has, I also have some complicated feelings for it as well, in that I feel like that the praise it gets doesn't make it as interesting to talk about as some of the other movies.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it does get criticized a lot, praised a lot, but as far as a gold standard film, sure, yeah. I mean, it's at the peak of everything that was going on. You had the great, was it written by Sekizawa, I believe?
Shinichi Sekizawa's script was really good.
Yeah, so you had the top players in Toho, kaiju films coming out. You had Honda, you had Sekizawa, you had Fukube, you had just Tsuburaya, everyone, the masters of their craft, all, right here in this film. And of course, you have these two great kaijus duking it out. I think that one, more impactful even than King Kong versus Godzilla, which is fun in its own way too. But it's in some ways this one, had a lot of impact, because at least in America in the 1960s they were, had the promotion of Godzilla versus the Thing, and what is the Thing and all that. And well, in Japan they knew what the Thing was. It was Mothra, and if somehow there was communication back and forth that someone knew that it was Mothra, I think American audiences knew at least that, he's going to be fighting Mothra. I mean, it's just got to happen. So the reveal, it happened quickly. I mean, there's an egg right at the beginning of the film, so it wasn't like holding anything back to get the idea that this is going to be, a big duke out. I think the surprise was in the fact that you had the twin larva coming out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, technically, we did get Godzilla versus the Thing in Godzilla in Hell, right?
That's true. Yes, the comic series, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Canon, non-canon, I don't know. No one's really paying attention to the canon of Godzilla too much. Some of us are, but yeah. But yeah, to have Godzilla and Mothra and then later teaming up, for GHIDRAH, the three-headed monster, I think that was great.
And speaking of which, that is my number 4, which is GHIDRAH, the three-headed monster.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a really, really action-packed and fun movie. It's very busy in the sense that you have these subplots, but I feel that the characters are engaging enough for you to really ride along with this as well as with the kaiju action.
Mm-hmm. And I was talking to someone about the humanizing of the monsters that's done in this, where they actually are talking to each other. What was your reaction first time that happened? You saw that?
I thought it was very curious for me. I mean, I do have some nostalgia for these movies, so I guess I sort of let it slide. But I feel that the fact that the monsters had a lot more personality is why I like this more than Mothra vs. Godzilla. Because I felt like with the previous movie, the personalities were rather set in stone, whereas here the kaijus had a lot more to do with it, and also the fact that it also has Rodan and Ghidorah in there.
Yeah,
that's probably why I rank it higher.
Yeah, more monsters the better, and I don't think people appreciate how much coordination it takes to have so many monsters on screen at the same time, suit actors that can barely see each other at times, and duking it out in sometimes nearly 200-pound outfits, and the unenviable job of being in the GHIDRAH suit. I've heard it's grueling.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, yeah, it's definitely the more vibrant of the two movies, and it's definitely very, very fun. I come back to it quite often.
Let me ask you about your nostalgia factor. Is it due to seeing it on VHS tape or television or any other way?
Yeah, I saw a lot of these Godzilla movies on YouTube back when it was very young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, my nostalgia is interesting. My mother saw GHIDRAH when she was young, and she remembers going to the movie theater for a quarter in the local movie theater and seeing it, a double feature of GHIDRAH and something else. I don't remember what she said, but I remember when she said that, I was like, okay, well, it's another monster movie, but I'm interested in Godzilla. And she's like, well, Godzilla's in it. And it's like, there's a Godzilla movie out there that doesn't have Godzilla in the title. Interesting. And then I discovered, Invasion of Astro Monster and, Destroy All Monsters and these Godzilla films because I was always searching for the VHS tapes, or going to the library and going under G for Godzilla. And if I didn't find it, well, I left. So to find out that there was this film that Godzilla wasn't even in the title, that GHIDRAH is the big reveal. He's the main monster in this, and but he's the villain. So it's cool to see that, and to have a space monster, like so many other space monsters. I think the cool thing about space monsters is you have a lot of flexibility with that you don't have to necessarily fall into the rules of maybe animals and things like we have on Earth or dinosaurs. The sky's kind of the limit.
Totally understood.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, great pick.
Yeah, thanks. So that was GHIDRAH the Three-Headed Monster, and now my number 3 is GOJIRA. So It's a very personal movie for me. It definitely has a soft spot in my heart because it was the very first Godzilla movie I ever watched. And
Really? Yeah.
yes, so I definitely respect the movie for that. And I feel it's kind of sacrilegious to not put this in the top five. But that's, of course, that's not the only reason. I feel it's a very nice social commentary. It's a very fascinating movie in general, just exploring the mindset of post-war Japan at the time and seeing how the characters would interact in such a situation. And it really set the blueprint for a bunch of other Godzilla continuities.
And with the fact that this is Ishiro Honda, and he puts himself, I feel, into a lot of the characters in his films. Who would you say in the original Gojira is embodies Ishiro Honda?
That's a very, very good question, to be perfectly honest. I kind of wanted to say either Dr. Yamane or Dr. Serizawa
Mm-hmm.
because they're kind of neck and neck.
Yeah, maybe a little aspect of Honda is in both his pacifist nature, and the fact that he also understands that Japan needs to be secure, needs to be saved from Gojira, and so Yamane, felt for Godzilla that he needs to be studied and understood. Serizawa, had the dilemma of the weapon that he had accidentally developed, and I think there's so much of Honda's personality in both. But in a sense, he might even have some of his personality might have come through in different characters throughout that. Takarada's character, what was his? Ogata. Yes, some of him might have been in Ogata as well. But I think you're right about that. I see a lot of Yamane, which I always think is a shame that in the legendary Godzilla they didn't name him the Watanabe's character Yamane. They said Serizawa, and I'm thinking, okay, a good tribute, but he's more of a Yamane, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the scene in Godzilla 2014 where Serizawa is explaining the origins of Godzilla is definitely supposed to be a callback to Yamane's original speech.
With the projector and everything, yeah, I mean, it's right there. So, and with the presentation of him and the fact that he's sympathetic for the creature, and so yeah, the original Gojira is one that as a kid I had trouble watching it just because of the black and white. Now it's so fantastic, it's so engaging, because I think as we get older and we start understanding that these films are more than just special effects films. They're character studies, they're stories to be told, and to think of the original Gojira coming out months after the disaster, of the Daifukumaru, the Lucky Dragon incident, to see that would almost be like a 9/11 film coming out months after 9/11. I mean, what do you think about something like that? Controversial or, bold? I don't know. How would you describe that?
Yeah, that definitely makes the movie very interesting to talk about. And I think even people who aren't stuck with the kaiju genre, they might deliver from its social commentary as well.
Yes, totally agree. Yeah, and not knowing that story ahead of time, that made it interesting when I learned that. And now I see the film in such a different light now when it begins opening with that fisherman scene and a flash of light happens. I think that's just really impactful now to know that story of the Lucky Dragon and their crew, and the radio operator who ended up passing away from the radiation sickness that happened, and even to the point of Godzilla being a curse to certain characters, that if he didn't get you the first time, he might get you later. In the the sailor who did end up surviving and was on Odo Island, and later Godzilla ended up smashing his house anyways. The fact that he felt like he can't even avoid the monster. It's almost like I'm cursed by the monster. What a frightening thought, and to put that in the film.
It not only has its roots in the radiation sickness, but also feudal era legends.
Yes, true. Almost that destiny in a sense. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah, that Honda, went the way he did with that, and the fact that this is a film that almost didn't get made because of Tomoyuki Tanaka's story of pitching another idea and it didn't pan out, and then he had to come up with something, and he came up with this monster film. And I think that's interesting how it launched such a genre and made such an impact on the world, from just an airplane ride back to Japan, and he needed an idea and looked out and one came to him. And I think it would be interesting to see some of the ideas that didn't end up getting made as a result. But still, what we got was absolutely amazing. And then it kicked off the careers for, we know Nakajima, Takarada. We've got so many that, and Tsuburaya, of course, with his great visual effects in these films, and the fact that we also have the tokusatsu style films, the fact that we have suits instead of stop motion. Not saying that one is better than the other. They're both challenging, and they're both classic visual effects, and I'm a visual effects guy, so I love seeing how they were innovative. These days, we have CGI. You put it in a computer. Those days, they had to really try to figure out how are we going to make this illusion come to life. And the original Gojira has such a story around it and how it came to be.
Yeah, it really does have the same amount of influence as the original King Kong, which those two movies definitely make a good double feature.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that's right. So, let me see. Gojira is number 3, and number 2, I'm going to have to go with none other than King Kong vs. Godzilla.
Interesting.
Yes. Kong vs. Godzilla is just a really, really fun romp. It's got a really nice sense of comedy to it, and that I feel is very unique. The original MOTHRA definitely had its fair share of comedy, but I kind of like the goofball comedy that was slapstick that was in this movie. It always brings a smile to my face whenever I see Sakurai and Farouk clowning around in the jungle, or Mr. Taco being Mr. Taco. The characters are pretty fun. And it has one of my favorite scores by Ifukube, and the music really is just great. It's pretty. It's very fitting. The overall Kong vs. Godzilla is just completely enjoyable. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, it's one I watch with my kids often. And both the American and Japanese version, of course I like to play the American version for them so they understand what's being said. And whoever voiced Mr. Taco and making him, lose control and saying he's sick of Godzilla, and it's such a quotable movie, and my son especially loves to quote Mr. Taco because he's always saying things that's just, he'll quote him, he'll just say, I'm sick of Godzilla, or, put my money on Kong, and so he's, that comedy and, how unique and interesting, if it's an East versus the West film, I, as a kid, was rooting for Godzilla. I wanted Godzilla to win. I mean, I was always a Godzilla fan before a Kong fan, and I always thought, well, what does Kong have over Godzilla? And I thought it was so unfair that they gave him Frankenstein's abilities to electricity makes him stronger, and I was like, that's not right. They had to do something, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, they definitely had to give Khan some special attack, because if Godzilla can have his atomic breath, then what does Khan have? Oh, he has electricity. And that's why in Godzilla vs. Khan, I was kind of disappointed when Khan didn't have electrical powers. But he did have an axe that he could use to charge.
He certainly had an advantage, an edge of some sort. Yeah, the dorsal fin axe. Interesting. Yeah, they beefed him up and they gave him a weapon, a melee weapon, if you will. So yeah. So I guess while we're on that, just maybe your first reactions to seeing the new Godzilla vs. Kong.
It was really, really fun. And I don't know where I would rank it next to the other MonsterVerse movies, or hell, even the other Godzilla movies. But I don't know. It probably would be neck and neck with this one, depending on. I really have to give that a lot of long thought.
Yeah, but like you said, it's a fun, big, action-packed movie, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like everything is just really, really enjoyable. As I said, the characters, the music, the effects, the monster battles.
Yeah.
All enjoyable.
We gotta give it some credit, and it goes back to the original King Kong vs. Godzilla '62 that we were waiting so long for, in a sense, a remake of it. Not a direct remake. Some ways it was tributing the original, especially in the comedy, in the lighthearted sense. But yeah, you can't put down the original King Kong vs. Godzilla. I do find myself being taken out of the film sometimes when I hear the Creature from the Black Lagoon themes, and I wish they would have just left in Ifukube's themes in there. But that was actually, for me, I heard the themes, that Creature theme from Kong vs. Godzilla, before I got to see Creature from the Black Lagoon. So when I watch Creature, I'm always reminded of Kong vs. Godzilla. So I guess if I was growing up in a different time, it might have been reversed.
Yeah, funny enough, I actually saw the Japanese version first.
Yeah?
Believe it or not.
Interesting. And I love the extra scenes that were left out. I love the drumming and the music of the pharmaceutical company that's got a TV station attached to it. I thought that was an interesting, portion of that, and that makes me look at the UN headquarters and think it's pretty boring, actually, if you think about it.
Yes.
The UN has a news station, and they're on 24 hours a day, talking about relief efforts in Chile, and okay, until a monster attack happens, how much news really is there?
Yeah, I think that's the point of the movie, that it's supposed to be satire of media and commercialism, which
Right.
I know Mothra vs. Godzilla also had this theme, and the original Mothra did too, but I felt it was most satirical in this one.
Yeah,
So,
the idea of exploitative media, I think that makes it interesting, and the fact that it was a pharmaceutical company, not even not a newspaper, not a television station, it was actually pharmacy, but they tied it in with the berry juice and all of that, so I've got to get me some of that berry juice someday.
yes. Absolutely. So, yeah. So before I go on with my number one, I would like to give some honorable mentions that didn't make it on this list.
Mm-hmm.
I was originally considering putting on Frankenstein versus Varagon, The H-Man, and I think Terror Mechagodzilla was on her as well. They're all very good movies, but I didn't feel that they had as much redeeming qualities to make it in the 10 list. But I still would recommend them nonetheless.
Yeah, especially those, like you said, the Terror Mechagodzilla, seeing Honda's last Godzilla film, and that one has a special place in everyone's heart too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes. And then, of course, my number one favorite Honda movie is Atragon. So
Really?
yes,
Good choice.
Atragon is my just like with Converse Godzilla. Atragon is it's a very nice blend of serious and lighthearted stuff. It's very whimsical, and just the concept of a flying submarine battleship and an undersea kingdom is it's just pure escapism. Like, people talk about how Godzilla vs. Kong has this Hollow Earth stuff, but here I feel it was very fitting to the movie itself.
Yeah, and anything with the Mu, empire and the underground nature of that, and harkening back to anything that we have in fiction that surrounds Atlantis. On the Pacific side, it's Mu, and all the technology and this culture that and this world that's been unexplored. I think that's any of the films that have references to the Mu, and this one literally takes you down there. And so I think that's it's definitely unique, at least in some of the other Godzillas and the other kaiju films taking place on the surface of the Earth. There's some relatability. You're with the military, and there's a problem. We need to find a solution. Here, they're taken out of their element. They're in another world, someone else's world, and so. Yeah, Atragon is an interesting pick for your number one, and so you find yourself rewatching it quite a bit, right?
Yes, I watch this one very often, and I actually showed it to my cousin one time, and she thought it was pretty interesting. I think it's also a very good character study, especially with Captain Jinguji. He's a really nice character in that he is on the wrong side of history, but there was a reason to the way he felt like that, and eventually he's basically still bitter over losing the war, but he eventually realizes that there are newer threats that have taken place, so he kind of has to move on from that. I feel it's a very interesting character arc for him, and also the Gotengo is, of course, a very interesting concept as well. Like, if this type of weapon was ever built, it would be the ultimate game changer in any war.
Yeah. There's been a lot of other, like, I haven't watched them, but other, like, anime, I think, that has Gotengo references. A ship similar to the Gotengo, correct?
Yeah, I saw Super Atragon, which is a loose remake of this.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, of course, Gotengo would go on to feature in Final Wars, which is also a really fun Godzilla movie.
Yes. Yeah. And I wish Atragon had more Manda. I understand why it doesn't, but I would love to see more Manda in that film. But we got to see Manda come out in Destroy All Monsters and, like you said, Final Wars. There's just a kind of iconic shot of Manda wrapping himself around the Gotengo. That's just, that's something that the kaiju fans all just, they see that, and it's something they can frame in their mind, is seeing that kind of battle going on between the two, the technology versus this kaiju. And yeah, Atragon. And you were talking about, is it Jun Tazaki that plays?
Jun Tazaki's character as Captain Jinguji. It was a really nice character arc for him.
He's a legendary actor, and I love every film that he has been in. And he's always playing, like you're saying, the military leader or seasoned scientist, reporter sometimes. I mean, he's been a little bit of everything, and but he's always someone who's very commanding in what he performs. And I love everything that he's been in, and a lot of his lines are very quotable too in the films that he's been in. And so this one I think let him shine quite a bit, and it's a great number one pick, and a very unique one too.
Yes, exactly. And I like this overall concept so much that I actually was thinking of doing a manga retelling of the story.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be.
So,
Yeah, that
so
would be interesting.
I've been writing down a treatment, and I did my own 3D model of the Gotengo in that version. So
All right, cool. Do you have any, sites out there with some of the things that you put together that you might want to throw out there for everyone to see?
unfortunately, no, but I do have some pictures I could show you.
Okay, yeah, feel free to send them my way, and I'll post them.
Before we wrap up on this episode, I was thinking about the scene in Mothra vs. Godzilla where Yuriko Hoshi as Junko tells the natives that they understand that they're upset with them over the things that have gone on, but they still need to learn how to forgive. I think that's a very universal message, and I feel like there are times that the kaiju fandom kind of abandons that message in favor of drama and just holding grudges. But to me, it's a message that really resonates with me because there have been times where I didn't get along with the fandom, and I would think of this particular scene.
Very true, and I
Yes.
think that that idea of forgiveness and that idea that we are in this together. We share this world together. There's nothing that needs to separate us, and I think that's what needs to bring people in the fandom, any fandom, together rather than apart. I think it's just like if somebody has one of their favorite films that's not my favorite film, we can still get along. We could still get along and have fun and poke fun at each other and still laugh with one another in the end and not feel like we're in competition, not feel like that our differences are somehow what defines us. It's actually our similarities that define us. So I think that's a great message, and that's one of the scenes in that film that is pretty impactful. And Ishiro Honda himself, I think, is another way that these films have reached so many in the fandom, in worldwide audiences. Ishiro Honda's style is, in my opinion, very legendary, and to us kaiju fans, we do need to realize that maybe here in the United States these would be considered genre films, B movies, whatever you. To us, they're not that. They're works of art. And I love the fact that in Japan they aren't considered, the B-list films or that's sci-fi. That's not truly drama. That's not truly art or anything like that. They treat these films just with as much sincerity as they would the Kurosawa samurai films. And I love the fact that Kurosawa and Honda had a great friendship together and a respect for one another, and it wasn't like you're down here and I'm up here. It was never that way with the two of them. They were good friends, and they could work together well. So that's a good message that you have to send to the fandom, and I think if we have more fans like this who can discuss our top tens or our favorites this or our least favorites of these and share these experiences, we'll be the better for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm also very glad that Kong vs. Godzilla is getting a Region 2 Blu-ray release in Japan.
Now that's good, yeah. And I think
Yes.
it's great
It
to
is
see.
the updated 4K version, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
So that has me very, very excited.
Yeah. These films are are epic, and they're long lasting. They'll be talked about long after we're gone, and I think that's what's great about these films is so many films can be forgotten, and these films get rewatched all the time, and the fandom will go on, and hopefully we'll be seeing some more material from Japan. I'm really excited to see what the next iteration of Godzilla or another kaiju film would be, and it all came down to the work of Mr. Honda and Toho and everyone who gave us this great series of monster films. So yeah, this is a great list, and I think it's great that you came up with this for the, was it 110th birthday of Honda?
Yes, that's right.
110. If he could only be here to see, what the legend of what he laid down could be. And I think that's great too, because if Fukube, we celebrated his 100th not too long ago at G-Fest with a concert of his music, and really appreciating, the work that he did. And so I think this is fitting. This year we celebrate the 110th birthday of Honda with this list, and so many people out there. I think they should list in the comments on this video, what their favorite Honda films are, and let us know what is unique about each one of them. Where did Honda pour himself into, and maybe even tell us your least favorites. Maybe All Monsters Attack is on there. Some people, it might be high up on their list, because Honda was very much poured himself into the child character Ichiro in that film. So yeah, there's so much of Honda we can see through these great films. So thank you, Justin, for being on the Monster Report and sharing with us your top 10 list. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Also, Ishiro Honda's biography by Steve Reifel and Ed Gajaszewski is available as an ebook for $14. So
yeah, I got my copy too. So it's a great book. A lot of study went into that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Some great interviews that he had with the Honda family and so many who worked with him. They had so many stories to share, and I got to meet Steve and Ed at G-Fest a few times and speak with them about the development of the book. So yeah, they definitely put a lot of time, effort, and love into the research for that book. So yeah, I'd encourage people to check it out if they haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for your time, and I'm going to give you the last word. Something that might be in your mind, quote from any of these films or anything.
Well, I don't know what else to say at the moment, other than maybe take a look at my YouTube channel. I do plan on doing some audio commentaries on a couple of these movies later on, so I think that will be very interesting. I just need to find the right amount of guests who will be able to join me for said commentaries, because when there's always two people talking about a movie as it goes along, it's always the more interesting.
Absolutely. I'd encourage people to reach out to Justin, find him on social media, and I'll post links to the YouTube channel and any of the other content you have too.
Yes, and I'm also close to 200 subscribers, so I would like some suggestions on what I could possibly host for that occasion.
All right, excellent. Well, I encourage people to reach out to you, and I think that's a great idea. I'd say go for it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us on another episode of the Monster Report. We will catch you next time.